A persistent theory in the philosophy of mind argues that an organism requires language to accurately perceive the world. This framework, known as linguistic determinism, suggests that without words to categorize our surroundings, human beings would be incapable of structuring sensory input into coherent thought. The opposing view is naive realism. This position argues that stripping away the artificial filter of language leaves you with direct, unmediated access to reality. In this scenario, the absence of words allows the raw data of the universe to flow directly into human consciousness without interference. These two extremes have created a strict gridlock. One side claims vocabulary creates reality. The other claims vocabulary obscures it. The actual mechanics of human cognition reject both premises. Perception strictly precedes language, yet the absence of language still leaves the observer with a mediated view of the world. Both theoretical extremes fail by ignoring the underlying mechanics of cognitive apprehension. Human biology actively reconstructs every sensory encounter long before it reaches conscious thought. The core of the misunderstanding lies in a severe semantic compression we use every day, the word experience. Ordinary speech collapses complex, distinct cognitive operations into this single static noun. We talk about having an experience as if it were a distinct object we acquire in a single moment. To solve this, philosopher Bry Willis developed a progressive mediation model. This 8-stage diagram is designed to conceptually decompose the exact timeline of human apprehension. Willis offers an explicit warning. This diagram is a conceptual decomposition. It is not a strictly linear neurological conveyor belt, and these stages overlap and modify one another in real time. Willis frames human experience as a heavily mediated, multi-stage pipeline where raw data is progressively reconstructed. This diagram illustrates the entire cognitive process, from initial stimulus to final spoken word. Notice the overarching bracket at the bottom. Before a single sensory input registers, an organism's physical capacities, limitations, and biological history dictate what can even register as salient data. A creature without photoreceptors cannot process light. A creature without an auditory cortex cannot process sound. These embodied constraints act as a permanent physiological filter applied over every step that follows. The model begins with early uptake. We track the progression from a generic world event to the moment that event acquires salience. Moving into the third box, attention, a crucial threshold is crossed. An organism's body is physically affected long before reflective attention can actually be directed toward the stimulus. Basic physiological filtering and biological prioritization happen entirely below the threshold of conscious realization. The body reacts before the mind is aware there is something to react to. This brings us to the second phase, experiential and reflective processing. Here, the pre-verbal embodied presentation shifts into active perception and event construction. The major milestone occurs at box 6. The fragmented sensory data is finally apprehended as an experience. The input is organized into a cohesive, recognizable event. Willis marks a specific epistemic uncertainty directly on the diagram. He asks whether the embodied presentation at stage 4 is already a conceptual model. The answer dictates the nature of human reality. Because a perceiving organism never encounters the world from nowhere, its biological hardware inherently models the encounter before it reaches higher cognition. Even our most raw, pre-verbal instinctual feelings are strictly constrained and modeled by the specific biological hardware we possess. Every sensation we feel has already been formatted by the body. To clarify this boundary, Willis draws on psychiatrist and philosopher Ian McGilchrist, who separates the immediate biological encounter from organized, communicable thought. The first half of the cognitive pipeline, stages 1 through 5, is categorized as presentation. This is the immediate, pre-reflective encounter with the world. Everything from stage 6 onward is categorized as representation. This is the highly organized form that makes the initial encounter available for internal reflection and external communication. The boundary line between these two states is exactly where pure sensation is forcefully packaged into a comprehensible narrative format. The data is translated from biological reaction into structured thought. Confusing the late-stage representation for the original biological presentation is the error made by linguistic determinism. Words describe the package, not the raw materials inside it. We can see this clearly in Phase 3. By the time we reach conceptual framing, the brain is applying a learned societal template over an apprehension that has already been processed. The final node is verbal representation. This sits at the end of the cognitive pipeline, representing the furthest step away from the original physical stimulus. Language functions as a post hoc rendering. It is applied to an encounter that has already been shaped by embodiment, prior orientation, and selective attention. Language serves as the final packaging of a biological receipt that has already been distorted by the pipeline. Looking back at the model's first node, stimulus or world event, we find a deliberate impossibility. Box 1 cannot actually depict reality prior to cognitive mediation. It exists only as a placeholder for whatever external forces occasion the observer's cognitive process. This creates an epistemic paradox. The moment the unmodeled external reality is placed into a conceptual diagram, it has already been modeled by the observer. Attempting to isolate an entirely unmediated stimulus is a structural contradiction in epistemology. We cannot observe something without our biology filtering the observation. The impossibility of Box 1 connects directly to the classic philosophical problem of infinite regress, the idea that it is just turtles all the way down. There is no final representational platform. There is no clean, objective floor from which reality can ever be inspected without mediation. Human cognition consists strictly of progressively reconstructed encounters. Each stage of perception rests entirely upon underlying biological conditions that the mind can never fully represent to itself. We will never process the universe exactly as it exists in a vacuum. Our closest access to objective truth lies in recognizing the inescapable constraints of our own cognitive framing.